Ladies and gentlemen, we have another songbird. The poem is Sparta singing in us, so we're going to take it as that. Digital Rising Star finalist and content creator. Put your hands together and help me welcome Mrs. Shanika Cupidon Moore.
Good morning, everyone. Hearing me through the mic? Is it on? Mic? I'm a little challenged. The TV mic. Good morning, everyone. All these challenges because I'm so short, huh? I want to dedicate this song to the cancer survivors and those that are still fighting the good fight. I have family that are fighting the good fight still, and family that have passed away, unfortunately. So I've experienced some of what you have based on association. I know it's not easy, but I pray that you feel some form of encouragement to keep rising up and keep fighting. Despite the pain you might be even feeling right now, just keep pressing on. You're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find the fighter, but I see it in you, so we gonna walk it out and move mountains. We gonna walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day, I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up high like the waves, I'll rise up in spite of the ache, I'll rise up and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. When the silence isn't quiet and feels like it's getting hard to breathe, I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet and move mountains. Take it to its feet and move mountains. And we'll rise up, we'll rise like the day, we'll rise up, we'll rise unafraid, we'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again. And we'll rise up high like the waves, we'll rise up in spite of the ache, we'll rise up and we'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you,
Put your hands together again for that reminder in song that we will rise up. We'll rise unafraid. And it's for that reason that the Mistyblue Cancer Foundation has put this function on for us to rise. The truth is, there are times when we don't feel like rising. There are times when even those of us who give the care don't feel like we want to, but we must rise. There are times when the doctors themselves, because of all that is happening, don't feel like rising. But here's one person this morning who is going to rise to the occasion. And at this time I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to put your hands together and help me welcome Dorothy Satchwell, founder and chair of the Mistyblue Cancer Foundation. No man, put your hands together and make her welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's even more challenging for me to do this after listening to that. Thank you very much. It really resonated. Okay, I don't need to give the name again. I'm Dorothy Satchwell, and I have the profound honor of serving as founder and chairperson of the Mistyblue Cancer Care Foundation. So on behalf of our esteemed patron, the Honorable Mrs. Justice Zeta McCalla, retired Chief Justice of Jamaica, and our entire board and community, I extend our deepest gratitude to each one of you for being here today and for this special and deeply meaningful occasion, the inaugural launch of the Faith Gifford Breast Cancer Symposium. We are here today for two reasons: to remember and to recommit. The name Faith Gifford resonates with love, with strength, and with purpose in this room. Faith was not just a name, it was her defining characteristic. She was a force of nature and a founding member of this very foundation and a beloved friend. Many of you knew Faith. You knew her fierce determination, her unwavering optimism, and her incredible heart. She was, in the beginning, rolling up her sleeves, convinced that we could make a difference in the fight against this disease. Faith believed in the power of community, in the importance of research, and in offering a hand to hold to those newly diagnosed. That's correct, right, Dr. Cox? Faith was a pioneer. Her passion and drive are woven into every fabric of this organization. She fought with incredible bravery, and while we feel her absence deeply today, we are determined that her legacy will be one of action and progress. It demanded that we channel our grieving into purpose. And so, we conceive this symposium not as a momentum of sorrow, but as a living, breathing testament to her life's work. This event is our promise to continue the fight she helped to start. That leads us to our second reason, to recommit. We recommit to the mission Faith held so dear. This symposium, established in her honor, is a direct result of that commitment. It is designed to be a premier platform for innovation, education, and collaboration in the fight against breast cancer. It is about the conversations we will have, the knowledge we will share, and the collaboration we will forge. This symposium is designed to be a catalyst. It's for new ideas, for hope, and for change. It is a place where leading experts, dedicated clinicians, courageous survivors, and passionate advocates can come together just as Faith always envisioned. Over the course of today, you will hear from brilliant minds and share ideas that have the power to save lives. This is the most fitting tribute we can offer to faith. So, as we begin, I invite you to carry faith's spirit with you throughout the day. Let her memory inspire your questions, fuel your discussions, and strengthen your resolve. Let us honor her faith by reaffirming our own in a future where no life is cut short by breast cancer. Thank you, Faith, for the light you brought into our lives and the foundation you helped build. Your work continues. And thank you all for being here to carry it forward. Let's begin. I now declare this inaugural Faith Gifford Breast Cancer Symposium officially open. God bless you.
Thank you so very much. And as I shared with you earlier this morning, this symposium is going to be filled with a lot of stories. And one of the stories that I have to share is, I know Faith for over 20 years. And this year, I would have been chairing or hosting a friend of mine's 50th birthday party. At the end of that birthday party, this lady walked up to me and said to me that I want you to host my wedding renewal. Now in that moment, I did not know who I was speaking with. I'm going to be honest with you. But like everybody who asks me to do a function, my answer is always going to be yes. And so this lady kept calling me and asking me, you know, when are you going to meet with me? But I had so many other things to do. And so I set the reminder in my phone for when her event was going to be. And that Saturday morning when the alarm went off, I couldn't find back the number of the person who was calling me. And so I called the person who I hosted the birthday party for and said, I've been trying to get through to this lady who asked me to host her wedding renewal. And the person said to me, she will not be able to call you because she has passed. So Faith had great plans for her life. And so today I think it could not have been any other thing but to have me hosting a symposium that is in her honor because she would have wanted me to host her wedding renewal. And so I ask, ladies and gentlemen, as we have been asked to recommit, we may not just be recommitting to Faith, but we're recommitting to every single person who will have to journey along this pathway. And so if you have somebody who you are, fighting with, I ask that you continue to fight. It is not over until. And so we ask that you bear that in mind as you continue to go through today's function. I wanted to spend some time to make mention of our sponsors. And so I want you to put your hands together as I call their names. Scotia Insurance, the American Friends of Jamaica, AFJ, Regency Petroleum Limited, RPL, Grace, Germax Pharmacy, Cal's Pharmacy, the Mistyblue Cancer Care Foundation, and of course the Sandals Foundation. Our patron today would have been the Chief Justice, retired Chief Justice Zaya McCullough, but unfortunately she's not here. But we ask that you bear her in your prayers as she attends to other activities. At this time, we're going to take greetings from our main sponsor and host, the Sandals Foundation, and invite at this time PR Manager Miss Ashley Crisp to come. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, and make her welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All right. I'm not a big fan of this, but you know, you have to do what you have to do. On behalf of the Sandoz Foundation and the entire Sandoz South Coast family, it is both an honor and privilege to warmly welcome you today to the Faith Gifford Breast Cancer Symposium. This symposium is more than just a gathering. It's a powerful statement of unity, resilience, and hope. It reflects the very heart of what we stand for at the Sandoz Foundation and as a work family. For many years, the Sandoz Foundation has been a partner with the Mistyblue Cancer Care Foundation Limited, an organization that has done remarkable work in the fight against breast cancer. Through this partnership, we have supported a range of meaningful initiatives, from cancer screening, drives, and awareness walks to community outreach programs and educational forums. Together, we've reached hundreds of women and families across Jamaica, helping them access early detection, resources, and vital support services. I'm going to pause in this moment because I did not share this with you. Today, we should have had a team member joining us. She messaged me last night, but funny enough, through the Mistyblue Cancer Care Foundation, a partnership that we've had is our team members also having access to getting their mammograms done yearly. And one of our team members who is also a part of that, funny enough, last year, I think the latter part of last year, she would have been late to do her test. And in December, she would have shared, she pulled me one side while we were doing our annual Back to Christmas Street, and she did share that she was currently in care because she would have found out that she had breast cancer. She's currently in remission, but again, it's because of initiatives such as these where our team members can also get early detection so they can be, get the assistance that they need. So again, a big thank you. Thank you. This partnership has not only deepened our commitment, but has also opened our eyes to even more the power of awareness, the importance of education, and the strength of community. At the Sandoz Foundation, our mission goes beyond hospitality. It's about building healthier, stronger, and more informed communities. And when it comes to cancer awareness, we are steadfast in our commitment. We stand with every individual who is on their own journey, those bravely battling, those in recovery, and those who continue to honor the memories of loved ones lost. You are not alone, and we are with you every step of the way. Today's symposium is a symbol of progress. It's an opportunity to share knowledge, to inspire action, and most importantly, remind each other of the strength that lies in unity. As a resort and as a foundation, we're truly delighted to play a role in creating spaces like this, where voices are heard, lives are impacted, and hope continues to shine. To our partners at the Mistyblue Cancer Care Foundation, thank you for your tireless dedication. To all of you here, participants, survivors, caregivers, medical professionals, and advocates, thank you for showing up, for leaning in, and for reminding us all of what's possible when we come together for a cause that is greater than ourselves. Together, let us continue to raise awareness, encourage early detection, and stand firmly beside those affected by breast cancer. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Let me see the hands of those persons who registered this morning. All right. So if you registered, simply means that you would have at least gotten a pen. Let me see the hands of those persons who got a pen. Good, I like that showing. And if you got a pen, it meant therefore that you got a book. Let me see the hands of those persons who got a book. Very good. So what that simply means, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is that we're going to go to school. Because we're not just here today to share stories or to listen, but we're also going to be able to take information, to inform ourselves and to also share with others. And so at this time, I'm going to ask you to put your hands together and help me welcome Dr. Patrick Roberts, surgical oncologist at the University of the West Indies. And he will be coming to present to us the implications of germline mutation in breast cancer patients. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen. Make you welcome and take out your book and pen.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the organizers of this conference for inviting me to speak. In particular, I want to thank Dr. Lincoln Cox. Dr. Cox and I have known each other for nearly 30 years, and I never miss an opportunity for us to catch up. So when he invited me to speak, obviously, I could not say no. My topic for today is multigene testing in Jamaican breast cancer patients. I tried my best to make it simple, even though we're speaking about genetics, understanding the nature of the audience so that everyone can understand. And I just want to start here. I often wonder if when our forefathers came up with this motto, out of many, one people, if they were geneticists, if they understood the implications of this motto. And quite befitting, our coat of arms have two Taino persons on it, a male and a female, and the original inhabitants of this island. And we were taught in school that the Tainos are extinct. But we now know that this is not true. There are still pockets of Taino communities in Jamaica. In particular, there is in St. Elizabeth. And we also know that when the slaves ran away from the plantations and they went up into the hills, what the men did was to kill the Taino men and they inbreed with the Taino women. So the authentic Maroon communities in Jamaica, you can still find Taino bloods. They are descendants of the Taino. So it begs the question, if these Taino genes are still around, how much has it contributed to who we are as a people, Jamaicans that is? And some of the current diseases that we're faced with, how much did these genes contribute? But to be fair to the Tainos, it's not just the Tainos. Then came the Spaniards who captured Jamaica. And obviously, they lived here for a period of time. And you would have had inbreeding. So the people we are as Jamaicans, we must have genes that came from Spain. And how much did that contribute to who we are as a people? And later came the British. How much did they contribute? And this end product, Jamaicans, contributed genetically by so many people. What is the responsibility genetically of these different groups? And with the British came the African slave trade. But the only other country or region in the Western Hemisphere that got slaves from the same part of Africa as Jamaica is Virginia. And that part of Africa is called Biafra, which is now a part of modern-day Nigeria. So the slaves that went to Trinidad and Barbados and Bahamas, etc., they were from a different part of Africa, still West Coast, but that particular tribe that came to Jamaica was predominantly from Biafra. Now remember, in those days, it's not like now we had transportation and you had a lot of genetic mixing. The different tribes in Africa were essentially isolated, and you would have inbreeding within the tribe. So how much did these genes that we got from Biafra contributed to us as a people? And subsequent to that, slavery ended, came the indentured laborers, where the Indians that came, but they came particularly from South India. And you look around, we have thriving Indian communities, Westmoreland, St. Mary, Clarendon, etc. And how much did this group of Indians contributed to who we are as a people Jamaicans, that is, and genetically. In addition to that came the Chinese, indentured laborers as well, contributed a lot to our culture. But genetically, what did they contribute? And there's also the Jewish community. Jamaica has the oldest Jewish community in the Western Hemisphere. In fact, it is said that the Jews came to Jamaica with Columbus, because that was in the time of the Spanish Inquisition, and the Jews were fleeing Spain. The synagogue in Jamaica is actually the oldest synagogue in the Western Hemisphere. We had Sephardic Jews, we had Ashkenazi Jews. We have Jewish cemeteries in Spanish Town, and there's a Jewish cemetery in Port Royal on the way to the airport. And if you should go into that cemetery, which I have been, there are graves going back to the 1500s. There are still Jewish names around that we take for granted, such as D'Souza. Now, how much did the Jews contribute to who we are as a people? We know that the Ashkenazi Jews have the highest incidence of genetic abnormality of any people in the world. So when you put all of this together, what exactly is the end product? And then subsequent to that came the Scottish shipwreck on the south coast of St. Elizabeth, and the survivors came ashore. And that's what contributed to the fair-skinned people in Southfield in St. Elizabeth. So how much did they add genetically to who we are as a people? And then subsequent to that came the German farmers that established very prominent German towns, Seaford, etc. And over time, they would all contribute to who we are as Jamaicans. But this special blend of these people from Africa, Biafra, these Jews, these Indians, these Chinese, these Taino, the end product is a very unique set of people. The fastest women in the world, the fastest men in the world, some of the most beautiful people on earth. Jamaica has a population of 2.7 million. America has a population of 330 million, about 110 times the size of our population. Yet still little Jamaica, 2.7 million, we won Miss World the same number of times as America. Because this special blend of people obviously is onto something. We even have our own religion. Yes, we have Christians, we have Islams, we have Hindus, we have Judaism, but we have Rastafarianism. And what did they choose as their symbol? The Star of David, which is also the Jewish symbol. And the reason for choosing that was obviously because Emperor Haile Selassie normally have his hands in this position, and to the Rastafarians they think it was the Star of David. There are two countries with this star on their flag, Morocco and Israel. But obviously our Rastafarians chose that as well. Here is an article recently published in the Guardian newspaper that the Industrial Revolution in the UK, it was the Jamaicans who went there who taught the British to do ironworks. And it was the Jamaicans who actually were responsible for the Industrial Revolution in Britain. You can fact check that for yourself. Here is the reference for it. So how is it that this little small country, 2.7 million, of this special unique genetic blend could accomplish so much? Now, a lot of you would have seen these statues. Here is a statue of Michelangelo, one of the most famous statues in the world. Here is a statue of Vigilant in Norway. But when this special blend of a people, the Jamaicans that is, was asked to create a statue that is representative of who we are as a people, this is what they created. Now, from looking at this picture, you can see it's all in the genes. And this picture is supposed to be representative of who we are. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not that long. My hands, that is. Because if you look medically, by the length of the hands, you could see that this person has morphinoid features. But this statue is supposed to be representative of who we are as a people. If any of you have ever done ancestry testing, all you would do is to submit some saliva, send it to Ancestry, and they would do testing and they could tell you exactly where your makeup is from. What percentage of you is from India, what part of India, what percentage of you is from Africa, UK, etc. Now, according to Ancestry, there are actually two types of Jamaicans. The only time I've ever heard of Jamaica being divided into two was a phrase that Mr. Siaga used to use, the haves and the have-nots. But according to Ancestry, there are two Jamaicans, genetically. There's a northern Jamaican, and there is the southern Jamaican. And this is the map taken from Ancestry showing that division. Because in the northern part of Jamaica, you will have Jamaicans looking more like me, and the genetic makeup is distinct. While in the southern part of Jamaica, you will have more European genes and the distinctive in the genetic makeup. So Ancestry classify us into northern and southern Jamaica. Now, a few Christmases ago, a family member of mine decided to issue Ancestry kits as a Christmas gift to my family, with the view that everyone is going to submit some saliva and we're going to send it off for testing. Now, as a sole doctor in my family, I asked everyone, can you please email me a copy of your results? You see, I was very suspicious of some of my family members. I suspected that some of my family members were not my relatives, because there is a huge difference. Family is loyalty, relative is blood. Your relative could be your enemy, but your family can sometimes be your relative. And this is why we speak about the Italian mafia family. They're not related, but there's a loyalty in the mafia world. So I was very suspicious of some of my family members that they were not relatives. So they emailed me copies of their genetic results. And it was quite surprising. And I want to show you two genetic results from my family. And what you're going to see is all of these groups that I spoke about earlier that made up Jamaica. You're going to see that these genes are still around. So if you look at family member number 1, you will see that this person is made up of 58% from Nigeria. This is the result from Ancestry. I would encourage you guys to do it. You can see that from the Cameroon, Congo, and Southern Bantu is 22%. From Mali, 13%. And for Benin and Togo, 7%. And you're not seeing any European genes in this. So according to Ancestry, this person is from the northern part of Jamaica, and they were correct. Now look at family member number 2. England, Wales, Northern, Western Europe, 53%. Ireland and Scotland, 11%. Sweden, 10%. Cameroon, Congo, Southern Bantu people, 9%. Nigeria, 8%. But if you go further down, look at this. Germanic Europe, 1%. It's the farmers that came to set up farming communities. Indigenous America, that's the Taino blood, 1% in this family member. European Jewish, 1% in this family member. So you can see that this family member is reflective of who we are as a people. Here we are hundreds of years after. With a little saliva, we could test and we could see the genetic makeup of this family member of mine and the different groups of Jamaicans that contributed to this person. And it really begs the question, how much did this genetically link to who we are? Now, a few years ago, a good friend of mine, Jordan Lerner, tested some Jamaicans living in Toronto, 179 Jamaicans to be exact. Jordan is a geneticist. And what he found in that group is that there's this gene called PALB2, and that the Jamaicans who were living in Toronto have the highest incidence of this gene in the world. And this is a gene that is known to cause breast cancer. Another name for it is BRCA3. Most persons are familiar with BRCA1 and BRCA2. We really call this one PALB2, but it's often sometimes referred to as BRCA3. So Jordan's result really struck me. Why would Jamaicans have the highest incidence of this breast cancer causing gene in the world? And a few years earlier, Barry did this publication on the Bahamian population. And what they found was that 27% of the women in the Bahamas who had breast cancer had this genetic abnormality called BRCA1 or BRCA2. And this actually was the highest incidence in the world for that gene, higher than the Ashkenazi Jews. And numerous publications to date have shown that Bahamas has the highest incidence of this gene. So here was something going on in the Bahamas as well, totally different from what's going on in Jamaica. And then came publications from Trinidad, and then came publications from Barbados, and we realized that there's something going on, and we're all different. The genetic results that we were seeing were different among the countries. Now, around 2007, the machines to do these genetic testings were locked away in a lot of the Ivy League universities, these wealthy universities, the Oxford and the Harvards. Very expensive machine. But around 2007, something changed. The cost of this machine went down significantly, and the machine became very small and compact, which is called a next generation sequencer. And what that did was it allowed third world countries like us to be able now to do genetic testing on our people. This was no longer locked away in the Ivy League universities costing millions of US dollars. We could now afford this machine to actually do our testing. And this was a game changer for us. Because what we're looking for is genetic abnormality. And there are different genetic abnormalities that we can see. We can see substitution, where one gene was substituted for another. We can see deletion, where a gene is deleted or a gene is added. And all of these changes actually predispose and lead to us getting cancer. Now, how do we interpret these results? When you submit that saliva and we test you, we can get one of three results. We can get a result saying positive, meaning we have identified a gene in you that is going to lead to cancer. Or we can get negative, where you do not, based on the technology we have at the moment, have any gene that will lead to cancer. Or you can get what is called a variant of uncertain significance, which means you have a gene. Currently, we're not aware of this gene causing cancer, but we have to keep a watch on it because it could be reclassified. In other words, tomorrow we could get data that this gene leads to cancer, or tomorrow we could get data that this gene definitely doesn't lead to cancer. This is very important because in the European population and in the American population, they're heavily tested because they had the machines and they have the money and they were doing it for years. So it's very unusual for you to find variants of uncertain significance in those wealthy countries. But in countries like India and Africa and in the Caribbean, we're not heavily tested. So this is where you're finding genes that we don't know the importance of it. And this is where the new discovery, medications against breast cancer and these genetic conditions, this is where the research has to be done. Because this is the last frontier for you to find new genes. So all the major universities are here in Jamaica trying to find these genes so that this is where new discoveries can be made. So what is it about Jamaica? Let's just give you some facts. In 2020, we had about 1,200 women diagnosed with breast cancer in Jamaica. And that same year, 637, about 50%, died. In other words, half. The death rate of breast cancer in Jamaica is 3 times what it is in America. Is this because genetically something is wrong with us? Is it that the quality of care that we're providing is not good? Is it that we're not screening, we're not getting the message across? I'm sure it's multifold, but 3 times the death rate in America is quite alarming. But it's obvious that something else is going on because the average age of breast cancer diagnosis in Jamaica is much younger than all the developed countries. So it cannot be care alone if our women are being diagnosed earlier. In addition to that, we now know from published data that Jamaicans have the highest incidence of triple negative breast cancer. And this is the most aggressive form of breast cancer. It's called the black woman's curse. And the medications that we have don't work well for it. And it's about 27% in our population. This is the highest published of all countries in the world. Now, this is going to be very important because ladies who have triple negative breast cancer have a very high incidence of having a genetic abnormality. So we're seeing little signs that genetically something is wrong. Women are diagnosed earlier, or mortality rate is higher, and the type breast cancer that we get is the most aggressive type, and we're not seeing that in other black countries or other countries, period, irrespective of whether they're black. So that led us to think that something is going on, and we need to start doing genetic testing in our population. Now, to do genetic testing, we can do one of two things. We can either collect saliva, and saliva is very stable, and it will last forever. Or we can use blood. The problem with blood is that we need to keep it on dry ice, and we cannot guarantee that the transportation chain, it will be maintained at the right temperature. So we decided to use saliva in our population, because once we have your saliva, it can last for hundreds of years, and we can still get access to the genes. So we use saliva in Jamaica. And we started out doing genetic testing with a company called Invitae from the US, and they offered us 84 genes. It's not that 84 genes lead to breast cancer. It's only about 14 genes, but the price of us testing for 14 was the same as us testing for 84. So we decided we will take the 84, we would amass some data, and then we'll try and figure out who we are as a people. So we're even going to be testing for genes that are not responsible for breast cancer, since the price is no different. Now, I will tell you this story, but we had to switch from Invitae to Blueprint, and I'll tell you the story later on why we had to. And Blueprint came with 160 genes, so we're now getting twice as many genes for the same price. So we tested all of our patients and amassed this data, even though the genes we were testing for was not necessarily related to breast cancer. And just to show you what the typical test result looks like. So we started testing, and we were seeing patients with 4 abnormal genes and 5 abnormal genes, which is a huge problem because some of these genes, just having one abnormality, gives you a lifetime risk of about 80% of getting breast cancer. And we're seeing results like these in the Jamaican population where people were testing for multiple genes. Now, if one is giving you an 80% risk, then when you have 3 or 4, you realize it's 100% you are going to get cancer. There's no if or but. As the gospel song said, may not know how, may not know when, you're going to get it. Here is another patient of mine. She had 2 genes, BRCA2 and CDH1. Each of these genes have an 85% risk of giving you breast cancer. This lady had bilateral breast cancer. So there is no doubt when you have this genetic abnormality that you're going to get breast cancer. So in 2017, we started doing our testing in Jamaica. And what we did was we decided that every cancer patient, we're going to test you genetically. Whether you have breast cancer, whether you have colon cancer, whether you have stomach or prostate, we're just going to test you. And what I've extracted is just the breast cancer data. And this is saying 177 because that's when we did the analysis. We're now up to about 450 Jamaican women who we have tested for breast cancer. On a US cost, we have spent over $450,000 US doing the genetic testing between 2017 and now. And just to show you the data as it relates to the breast cancer. So we have tested 177 patients. We did 125 testing with Invitae. Remember, we had to switch to Blueprint, and we did 52. And what we found was that 2/3, 67% of the Jamaican women who we tested with breast cancer had a germline mutation. 15% out of that was a gene that is known to cause cancer. And then about 50% is this variant of uncertain significance, meaning we're seeing something and we don't know if this is responsible for breast cancer or not. Remember, this is the last frontier. The data we're getting from the Jamaican population, you can't get that from Europe. You can't get it from America or Canada, because those populations have already been heavily tested, and all the genetic abnormality there was found in those populations. But we're seeing a lot of genes in the Jamaican population that scientifically we have no idea where to classify them. In addition to that, we have found genes in the Jamaican population that has never been discovered anywhere else before, what we call a founder's variant, meaning a genetic abnormality that seemed to have derived from that mix that I spoke about earlier on with the Taino and the black blood and the Indians, the Chinese, etc. And we now need to figure that out. And we have the technology where we can work back ways, and we can figure out exactly which race or which group contributed these abnormalities that we're seeing. Did it come from Africa? Was it originally here with the Tainos? And that's what we're going on to next. And in addition to that, what we found was that the number one predictor of having a genetic abnormality in Jamaica is having bilateral breast cancer. In my practice, I do have a lot of patients on presentation. They have cancer in both breasts. So our intent since the past 8 years is to test our patients with cancer to see which mutation is responsible for the strange presentation we're seeing in Jamaica, to see what is the prevalence of pathogenic mutations in the Jamaican population, to see what are the founders' genes, what genetic abnormality is arising because of who we are as a people, and also to compare and to see how we compare to the other Caribbean countries. We now know that to provide care, we need genetic testing and we need precision medicine. And this is the one thing we're lacking in third world countries. And if we don't get up to date with genetic and precision medicine, patients with breast cancer will do much better in first world countries than they're doing here. The days of getting chemotherapy are done. We are now using immunotherapy, which is much, much more effective than chemotherapy. So we have to get with it genetically in our Jamaican population. So here is this company that was started in New York. It's called 54 Genes, because we now know that the black race is the most heterogeneous race. A black man in North Jamaica is different from a black man in South Jamaica, which is different from a black man in the Bahamas, which is different from a black man in the US, and is different from a black man in Africa. So this company is now testing the black race all over the world, because a white company is not going to do that for us. We have to have our own blueprint, our genetic makeup, so that we, the black race, can discover our medications. We know that breast cancer is totally different in black people as it is in white people. And that's what this company, 54 Genes in New York, is about, to map us genetically so that we can discover our own. Now, how did this get started? This picture was actually taken in 2017. And this is Dr. Wesley Francis and his perfusionists. They're from the Bahamas. And they came across to Jamaica to assist me with a surgery. It was a young patient, 22-year-old, and that surgery took us 24 hours. And that's why they had to fly in to assist. Dr. Francis is a surgical oncologist as well, and he's in the Bahamas. So after finishing the surgery 24 hours and we went home and we slept, I decided to take them out for dinner the night after. And as is typical of us, we engaged the spirits. And after consumption of the spirits also engaged us. And we started talking a little bit loosely. And someone at the table said, hey, I just did my genetic testing and I have BRCA1. I'm positive. And that's when it started, and we decided that we need to do something about this. We need to start genetic testing in our patients. Now, at the same time, a few months after I met this Jamaican, his name is Camille Ricketts, and he has a PhD. He works at Cornell University, and he has a PhD in computational biology. He was a recipient of the Prime Minister's Award in 2018. And this was exactly what we needed to help decipher this. Because what we were seeing in the Jamaican population, we needed a computational biologist. It was a whole field by itself. And Dr. Ricketts has really been at the forefront in terms of doing the data analysis so that we can interpret what we are seeing in the Jamaican population. The data is so interesting that we were recently invited by the Americans to present it at the American Association of Cancer Research, which we did in Chicago in April of this year. But all good things must come to an end. This is the letter, the email we got from INVITI in 2022, basically saying that they will no longer offer genetic testing to our region. And we wanted clarification, what the hell is our region? So we sent them an email to say, can you define what that is? And the letter, they basically notified us that they will no longer do any genetic testing in Africa and the Caribbean. What did Africa and the Caribbean have? Black people. But they're willing to continue doing genetic testing in North America and in Europe. So we had to end our testing, even though we plead and we begged with INVITI, we had to end. And thankfully we found this company in Finland called Blueprint. And Blueprint offered us 160 genes at the same price, while INVITI was offering us 84 genes. So we were back in business again. And thankfully to Blueprint, we have been still doing our testing and we have been getting the data. And again, so now we're testing 160 genes. We're seeing genetic abnormality now that we weren't seeing before with the INVITI database because we're testing twice as much. Here's one Jamaican patient who has this gene called a SBDS. For the doctors around, I'm sure you've probably never heard of this gene. I never heard of it until I got this result. And this is what we're seeing, accounting for some of the early presentation of breast cancer in our population. There's no other way we can explain this. This is the youngest patient I've treated for breast cancer. She's 14 years of age, and she had advanced breast cancer, and it spread to her lung, and she died. Now, obviously I didn't put her picture because of privacy, her face, but she's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, and I'm not saying that because she had breast cancer and she died. And it's obvious that at birth, her parents realized how beautiful this girl was, and her name was Mona Lisa. That was her name. But you had to see her face to appreciate. She was very beautiful, symmetrical face, etc. And she died at age 14 with breast cancer. I have 3 patients, 13-year-old with colon cancer, 2 of which from South. I think you were involved with one, Lincoln. There's no other way we can explain that. All 3 are now dead. 13-year-old with advanced colon cancer. I have a 7-year-old that Dr. Abel and I operated on at Bustamante with advanced liver cancer. There is no other explanation than genetics. And this is why we need to properly interrogate and to understand what's happening in the population. I don't want to take credit for this work. I'm not the sole person involved. As you can see, there are numerous persons who are involved with this work. And I just want to share this picture of Dr. Cox and myself at a breast cancer conference, I think in the heights of COVID. And as is typical of when we get together, we did engage the spirits again, Dr. Cox. We normally do. And thank you all very much for inviting me to speak.
With such information, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to put your hands together again for teacher oncologist. That was a rich history lesson. Which statue in Jamaica represents you? Emancipation Park. That was a very good one. Ladies and gentlemen, you will have your notes. And so it's now time for the examination. And so at this point in time, the chief invigilator and marker is going to take your questions.
My apologies, guys. I have to head back to Kingston, so that's why I'm taking the questions now, because I have a 2:30 meeting in Kingston. So as soon as I finish the questions, I'm out of here. So that's why we're doing it now and not at the end. But I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have about the presentation.
Thank you. Very good. Eye-opening,
Thank you.
informative. Thank you.
Thank you very
Where
much.
can we get these tests done in Western Jamaica?
That's a very good question. At the moment, the testing is done in Kingston. It's really just saliva, and it's really just a Q-tip. So there's no reason why we can't do it in Western Jamaica. I guess we just need to, it's a discussion I need to have with Dr. Cox. We just need to find a location, because it's really just a Q-tip. It's not as if it's sticking or rotating blood or anything. And for the past 8 years, we've been doing it in Kingston, so we don't really need to decentralize it. Because it's just saliva, it's just a Q-tip and it's stable. So, it's not, there's no reason why we can't do it here. Because we collect it and then we send it to Finland via FedEx and we get back results in about 3 or 4 weeks. So, we're going to get that sorted out. And the guys in Montreal are asking the same question. So, I realized that, I guess time to sort it. Sorry, yes. Oh, sorry.
All right. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Brilliant presentation. I think I got the most essential part of the presentation. The information also resonates with me because when I was back in education, I had a student who, I'm not sure if she's dead, but she had breast cancer, advanced breast cancer around about 13 as well. So I know the history of it in terms of that rapid nature, because by grade 11 she was in a serious state. What I'm driving at, just to ask the question, no, in terms of this rich assortment of information outside of this forum, possibly I would never have gotten it in such a nature. Where can we readily receive this information? And also the follow-up of it is, how widespread is this information shared generally?
Those are some very hard questions, very pointed questions, appropriate questions. Let me just start with your first comment about the student you have who probably is dead now. The next step is that we need to, even if she's dead, we need to find that family. And we need to do genetic testing because obviously the survivors, the persons who are alive in that family, if there's a genetic abnormality, you're going to be at risk. And every time I give this talk, I'm hearing these stories of, younger ages than the 14-year-old who I showed, and I realized that we really need to document. I have given this talk at a few conferences, and I think Dr. Cox presented it recently, and that's why he invited me to speak. We tend to publish this kind of thing in the medical literature, and this data is about to be published. It's available online. We presented it at the American Association of Cancer Research. In the medical community, when we do research, that's kind of how we disseminate it. But I think the point you're trying to make is actually quite valid. We probably need to disseminate it more for the average Jamaican to understand. And, straight enough, it's not really easily done. It's not. So I don't know. I guess I need to look into that. Yeah. I guess we'll have to contact the media houses, and I don't know how interested they are. And then people would think you have alternative agenda and they're trying to push genetic testing and, all of the negatives that come with that. It's not an easy population to sell some things. You're probably selling vaccine much less genetic testing. So it won't happen without pushing.
What do we touch on?
It should be done.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Very wonderful presentation. My question is, does the size of your breast contribute to how high the risk is of getting breast cancer?
The answer is no. It doesn't.
No? Okay, thank you.
Morning, everyone. Wow. So my question is a spin-off from hers.
Yes.
So she asked about testing. It is done in our region. The answer was fairly no. So it's done in Kingston. Where exactly is this done? One.
Yes.
Two, does one need a referral to get that done? most of us are, of course, familiar with chemotherapy and radiation as treatments for breast cancer. What's the cost that's associated with chemotherapy? Because we know that these things may be costly and therefore prohibitive, so the average Jamaican may not readily be able to access this kind of treatment. Could you expound on that for us?
Excellent questions. So where is the testing done? It's done at Cunningham Medical Services. So that's the last one on the list there. And the phone number for the office is there. It's 390-8783. You don't need to be referred. You can literally just walk in and get tested. You don't need to come and see the doctor. The testing is done by the nurse. It's literally just a questionnaire that you fill up to tell us about your family history, if there's any cancer, etc. We literally put a Q-tip in the mouth. We put it in a special kit and it is sent off to Europe. So you don't need to come and see the doctor, etc. And in terms of immunotherapy is readily available in Jamaica. It's nothing new. We have been using it for some cancers from as far back as 20 years, where the first one we started was gastrointestinal stromal tumor called GIST. It's a medication called Gleevec. As it relates to breast, we do have it readily available. The major drawback with immunotherapy is that it's recently discovered compared to, say, chemotherapy, and as a result of that, most of the companies still have the patent on it, so the medications are extremely expensive, some more than $1 million Jamaican dollars per dose. So you can understand that unless you have good health insurance or you have done well financially, a lot of the persons who are real candidates for it cannot afford it. But yes, I do have a lot of patients who are on it. Some persons have sold their house, family members, chip in, etc. And they're very effective. Did I answer all the questions? Was there anything I missed? The cost. The cost for the genetic testing. The cost for the genetic testing is 90,000 Jamaican dollars. When I came back to Jamaica 15 years ago, it used to be 10,000 US dollars. And we're now, because of that machine I showed you, things have changed. We're now down to 90,000 Jamaican dollars. And that 90,000 covers the special kit, FedEx, the doctors in Finland, the lab in Finland, everything. So that's, and you're getting 160 genes. So even though you have breast, we're testing you for colon and pancreas and ovaries, everything, because it's the same price. And the price continues to come down, so we expect that it's going to fall even further. I think I answered everything, right? Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Very well documented research. As a medical professional myself, in 1998, I have someone who was diagnosed, my mom, with what's called cholangiocarcinoma.
Yes.
One of the rarest form of cancers known. And as a Jamaican woman, the doctors were a little bit confused as to where this came from. This presentation today just brought me forward and opened my eyes, because I do research, I'm a practitioner, and for some reason I couldn't make the connection. The connection was open to me today where this could have come from in my family. Question, if I need to be tested, is there one of the markers that would show this type of cancer?
So cholangiocarcinoma is actually very common in the Jamaican population. We have a meeting every Friday from 12:30 to 2. It's via Zoom, so Dr. Cox and his team would participate. So all the doctors and nurses around the country who want to participate, and we cover the other Caribbean countries as well. And every week we get about 10 to 15 cases of cholangiocarcinoma. And we tend to see it predominantly from Clarendon, Manchester, St. Elizabeth. Don't know if your mom is from any of those parishes. We see a little bit from some parts of Westmoreland. We see a bit from South St. Anne. And you can figure out probably what's common among those regions. We assume it's that. We're not sure. We have no proof. But it's fairly common. Yes, there are some genes that put you at risk for cholangio. Not as many as, say, breast cancer and colon. But we do get a lot of cholangio, and we think we see too many for our population. So every week we're getting like 10, 15 new cases. It's because wherever you are in Jamaica, and if you have that, you end up coming to us. And coming to us don't necessarily mean you physically come to Kingston. Your surgeon here can literally log on to the meeting, and we review the images and we make a plan. Because that's how we do it now, and that's very convenient for the rural patients. I'm from the country as well. I'm not from Kingston. So I know when you're sick and to go to the doctor is a production to get a bus or a taxi and the amount of money and that sort of thing. And the waking up 3 o'clock to get to Kingston on time. So these days what we do is we do it via Zoom. And only if you need surgery, etc., then you would come. But all the investigations and the discussions and planning, you don't need to travel to Kingston anymore to do that. It's even worse for the patients from the smaller Caribbean countries like St. Kitts and all of that, because they have to come to Jamaica or go to the US, so it's obviously cheaper to come to Jamaica. We don't have any direct flights, so sometimes they have to fly to the US and get to us, and it takes 2-3 days to get here and back, and it's so expensive. So we've been trying to work on that by using Zoom, and we've been doing that now for 15 years. Of cholangio? I don't know what the incidence is in terms of, we haven't looked at the data, we have collected it, we just haven't looked at it, but it's very common here. I don't know if it's higher compared to the US, or I don't know if we look at subgroups for, say, blacks in Jamaica versus blacks in the US, but it's not rare here, it's very common.
Because they told us that for her, as a person of color,
yes.
It was rare more than.
This is in the US? Because they don't have access to our data. You see, they would not understand us as a people, and this is what I was mentioning earlier on, that this is why we need to do our own studies and our own publication, because it's very common here. Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning.
My question is, has there ever been a farm testing of the soil to see if there is a direct correlation with the different variants of the cancer from the different segments of Jamaica?
That's a very good question. So there is this book published by Professor Gerald Layla, and it's called A Geochemical Atlas of Jamaica. And basically what Professor Layla did was to travel around Jamaica and to measure the radioactivity in the soil and also our sources of water. And there's this particular source in St. Elizabeth where the radioactivity, according to Professor Layla's book, is about 1,000 times higher than what we would normally like. So we do think that there is a correlation. We have never been able to prove it. We notice, and from when we were in medical school, Dr. Cox will tell you, we have always heard that St. Elizabeth, Manchester, Clarendon is cancer belt, and that most of the patients with cancer, and a little part of South, St. Anne and Westmoreland, that sort of thing. And we noticed that the trend has continued, that every week, on a Friday we get 15 to 20 cases, and most of them going to be from these regions. We don't get that from Portland and St. Mary and St. Thomas. And we think that it has to do with the soil. Bauxite is rich in these areas, and we know that there is uranium and plutonium at a very, low concentration. So we don't know, and we have been looking into it with the nuclear department at university. What we have been told is that Dominican Republic has the same bauxite footprint as Jamaica. The problem is that they speak Spanish, we speak English, so it's not so easy to do communicate and do research with them, but we're hoping to see if we can look into this. Other bauxite producing countries in the region like Guyana, the footprint of that bauxite tends to be different from what we're seeing in Jamaica. So the closest to us is Dominica. So if it is related to the soil, what we're seeing in Jamaica, we theoretically should be seeing that in Dominican Republic as well. And the theory behind that is that when the asteroid basically, what landed in Jamaica was the same thing that landed in Dominica, and that's why we have the same footprint when it went into the Yucatan area.
Okay, that. Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Listening to your presentation, it has done two things to me. One, I'm impressed with the level of research and the information that you have brought before. But it has made me sad, because Without a doubt, one of the contributing factors to cancer is poverty.
Yes.
Yeah. And therefore, if we're going to look at policies in Jamaica in terms of getting cancer treatment, cancer care, cancer awareness to where we actually want it to be, where do we start from today in terms of policy making for the ordinary man? Because what you have shared doesn't apply to the ordinary man because they don't have the resources. And what you would have found is that more than ever, persons who are of the low socioeconomic background would have been persons who would have been diagnosed with cancer. So all what you have said would not have been of help to them, and they are important to us. As a foundation, what we do, we go across the deep rural communities and we do health fairs to see if we can offer help to these persons who normally wouldn't have been able to access it because they don't have the resources. So where do we go? Where do we start the conversation with policymakers to make sure that you do not die because you're poor? Because that is basically what is happening. You're dying because you're poor.
Excellent question. You know, if you should go on the WHO site, it will tell you that the number one determinant of how long you're going to live is how much money you have. And that's something on the World Health Organization. And if you look at it, if you look at the wealthy countries, and I mean real wealthy countries now, I don't mean fake, I mean like Sweden and Norway and Denmark, those countries, that's where some of the best life expectancy is. And if you look at countries that are not wealthy, a lot of them unfortunately are in Africa and some in the Caribbean, our life expectancy is not good. You know, Queen Elizabeth's mom died at 105. She and her husband went to nearly 100. I think the husband got to 100 and she was just short of 100. You don't get there if you're poor. You know, you don't get there if you're poor. So to answer your question, what we need is universal health care or access to health care until we can lift the majority of the population out of poverty. We need access to universal health care. The fact is most Jamaicans only have health insurance because of their employment. And it's only 25% of the population that has health insurance. And the day you lose your job, that's the day you lose the insurance. We are not trusting of insurance companies. The average Jamaican who is fairly wealthy and owns a business and doesn't go and take health insurance even though they can afford it. And so it's a problem. We need universal access to proper health care while we continue, which is going to take decades, if not centuries, to lift the population out of poverty. If not, only those who can afford will live long. It is.
Thank you, Dr. Roberts. My question, well, I really appreciate the level of research and the knowledge that you have shared with us this morning. But the question I have is, in earlier days, there was not so much prevalence of breast cancer and other sources of cancer. What can be done as preventative cure or care so that as a nation we don't get there?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
So I would want to know that, is there researches in place to prevent the cause of cancer in our population, and what are these researches? If there's any, because I know you're looking at the care and the cure when the cancer is there, but to prevent before we get there, because if that can be done, we would be a better people.
So, you know, I actually don't think the incidence of cancer in Jamaica is increasing. I'm from the country. And when I say country, I don't mean what you guys have here. I mean real country. I mean, by where I'm from, this is, you know, town. And I remember growing up in the country and, you know, people would get sick and you would hear it's Obia or it's Bigfoot or Duppy Box someone. And I realize now that, you know what, the person who we used to say Duppy Box, that person had a stroke. And that Bigfoot person was a diabetic foot or varicose veins. So I do think that as standards of living improve, a lot of what was unknown or becoming known were better classifying and appropriately, having the cause of death. There were persons in the country, in the community whose abdomen would get big and all of that, and whereas others realized that they had cancer and they had ascites and that sort of thing. So I actually think a lot of the unknowns are now becoming known. Now, what can we do? We can't necessarily prevent you from getting cancer. There are a few things that we do that we can probably, like we can vaccinate and those things, and that can help us. The HPV vaccine can help for cervical cancer, etc. As it relates to breast cancer, where we will really get the real buck for the money is early detection. Because you don't just get up one day and get breast cancer. It starts from these little salt grains that we see on a mammogram, and that's not cancer as yet. And it is these salt grains that are going to transform into cancer. So if ladies do the mammogram, we can find this thing before it is cancer and actually prevent you from getting breast cancer. In other words, early detection when it is cheapest, when the cure is more effective, etc. The problem is we are not getting the message out. Very few Jamaican women get mammogram yearly. If you look at the minimum wage, and if you look at the price of a mammogram, let's say you have a Jamaican woman with one child. After you work for the week, you're only affording the mammogram. You still need ultrasound, you still need biopsy, you still need chemotherapy, you still need surgery, you still need radiotherapy. So, and Jamaican women are excellent economists. So when you work 16,000 for the week, you can't spend 10,000 out of it to pay for a mammogram. And that's the problem. If we now have better access, free mammogram, etc., frail care, proper frail care, then, we probably would make some improvement there. All right. Thank you all very much. If you allow me, I'll stay here and talk to you guys all day. My middle name is Oral, so I will talk all day. So I'm heading back to Kingston.
Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Dr. Roberts. And as good teachers, he did something to us because the lesson is not finished. So he would have invited us to come to his office to continue the education. He left his number, he left all his contacts. I hope and trust that you took it down. Now, recognize one thing, that when he mentioned that the amount of money that you have tells how long you will live, I recognize persons started checking their pockets and their cell phones. I'm not sure we want you to think about that right now, because we're going to live as long as the Lord would have wanted us to. So thank you so very much, Dr. Roberts, and we wish you a safe journey as you continue to. All right, so we're going to ask you to put your hands together at this time for me. And when I said for me, I didn't really mean for me, but I thank you for that one. So we now have the Faith Gifford's family with us, and we know though she isn't here, her legacy continues. And so I'm going to ask you to put your hands together and make them welcome. And so at this time we'll turn our attention to the Faith Gifford's cancer journey. Voices from the grave, lessons from the living. And we'll be hearing from a few persons: Dr. Lincoln Cox, surgeon, Mr. Gifford, husband, and Hyacinth McFadden, sister-in-law. I'm going to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to help them by giving them a rousing applause to come to the podium, and with the strength of their applause to share the Faith Gifford story, starting with Dr. Cox.
Good morning. On behalf of the Mistyblue Cancer Care Foundation, we'd like to thank them for facilitating this conference this morning, and we think it was very important. Now, Faith, as Dorothy had mentioned before, is one of my very close patients, and standing beside me is her husband. I met Faith, I think in 2013. She was, everybody who knows Faith knows that she's a very ebullient character, very high-pitched voice. When I met her in 2013, she just come to my office and said she heard that I was a surgeon at SAV, and she introduced herself to me. Little did I know that at that time, I would have now shared a 12-year experience with her. Unfortunately, the majority of it was taking care of her as a cancer patient. However, outside of cancer, man, the experience with Faith and her family and her husband was just wonderful. I must just say that during my time in Westmoreland, I've spent a lot of my energies getting my children through school. And I think they are the most important things to me. And I only entrust certain people with my children. And I can tell you that this year, just one event, my son was supposed to take part in Western Championships at STET. And I had a flight this very same morning. And I was wondering, how am I going to get my son to the preliminary track and field event at STET, then get back to the airport? So I searched my brain just trying to figure out who is going to take them. And in the end, I just called Mr. Gifford, I called Faith Gifford, and they both took him to Western Championships at St. Elizabeth Technical High School. And this is a close relationship that we've had over the years. There's so many times after Faith's surgery, many times I would just turn up at home. On my veranda would be many things: banana, yam, cow tail, lots of things. She would turn up at the hospital, I'm in surgery, and she would just leave curry goat, puffer fish, anything. She just leave it. And I thought it was unique to me. But then the other parts of the hospital as well would say they're having an event and Miss Gifford is baking. Like, what are you saying? And she was just everywhere. She was ubiquitous to me. Everywhere. I thought she was a little angel that the Lord sent around everywhere. And she had such a spirit. She's a true survivor. I've never seen her sad for the majority of her years. The last year, when I saw the shine came off Faith's face, it affected me so much. I was so unhappy. And I was so sad because I saw her with the smile had left her. And I understood then that by then, the cancer had recurred many times actually. And it was now towards the end. But at the start time when I met her, we had surgery, and she was cancer-free for about 8 years until one day she presented with respiratory problems. And then we had a recurrence in the mediastinum in the chest. And then she went to National Chest Hospital, and just her spirit alone, because when I saw that mass in her mediastinum in her chest, I was wondering, there's no way. And she went, she did chemotherapy, and the mass disappeared. And then, unfortunately, it recurred in her bones. And that was where the final straw was. But for us, she's a typical Westmorelite. She's embodied with a culture the kindness, just a loving person all around. I've never seen a person like that, and her family. And I did not say anything at her funeral because I knew I would have a problem. So a little time now has passed, so I could share with the family members my experience with her. But she was everything to me and my family. I mean, I just spoke about taking my son to the trap meet, but if my car was punctured, she would find her way. If I had, I mean, her husband would say, Faith would call her and say, Dr. Cox have something to do, so turn back. And she would just, and he would turn back. But I want to share with the family how loving and my remembrance of her, and that the journey with her was, I mean, one that is unmatched by any other patient that I've had. Because, perhaps because she just lived across the way, because I live at Campbellton Gardens and she's living over by Carwina, and she's just across the road. But for the rest of the family, I want them to give their experience and talk about her a little bit as well.
Good morning. My experience with my wife. I don't know what to say, but I want to say something. I give thanks to Dr. Cox for the type of help what she gave my wife. Also, the doctors in Kingston. Because Dr. Cox do a lot for Lana to save his life. But the time came that him couldn't do nothing. Lana not breathing right. I said, when next year come, water around our lungs. I said, call one other doctor.